controversial. It's these little things. It's like Chinese water torture. It's just the consistency, the frequency, the rhythm of it. But I saw this about Philadelphia. We talked, I think, on Wednesday. Yes, it was Wednesday, about this big shootout with the police that happened in Philadelphia. Surprise, surprise, it was like a black guy involved with drugs, some 30-some-year-old, 34-year-old, I think, black guy, who was involved in drug crime. It was like an 85% black neighborhood, shoots 6 police officers, massive police presence. I think multiple other people were wounded, and so that's terrible. I think everybody agrees that's bad. You don't want to see people shooting cops in your neighborhood. Well, to add insult to injury, to make it just that much better, if you don't believe me when I say things about, the Democrats or the cities, I'm watching videos in the aftermath of, they apprehend the suspect and they're sort of cleaning up the crime scene. And you see a crowd of people gathered around the police, throwing stuff at them, jostling them, pushing them, shoving them, swearing at them, yelling at them. You see all these young thugs getting up in their face, trying to act all tough. And of course, who are we talking about here in this neighborhood? In Nicetown, Tiago. Who is heckling the police like this after they're arresting a guy involved in drugs who just shot 6 police officers? And you've got on the whole block, this whole mob of people going up against the police, doing all these shenanigans. And I watch this and I think to myself, does any other people in this country behave like this? Does anybody else behave like this? Have you ever seen that in your life? White people behave in this manner? Have you ever seen, frankly, even like Asians? I don't even think I've seen Hispanics act in this manner, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I haven't seen enough scenes like this. I've obviously grown up in a somewhat sheltered place, but I just see, and I see this all the time, and I think, does nobody think this is unacceptable in America? And by the way, people talk about multiracialism in our country with terms like assimilation and culture. They say, as long as we have millions of immigrants coming from Guatemala and Nicaragua, well, that doesn't matter so much if the country is majority non-white, so long as they're assimilating into the culture. That's always the operative word. It's never about race. It's always about culture. It's always about, are they going to live up to the same standards that we have? And my question is that even possible? Because you know what? Look, not for nothing, but, the African Americans, where does that term come from? These people have been on this continent for 400 years. They've been here basically as long as we have, maybe a little bit shorter of a time. I don't think they started bringing them over until a little bit later. But they've been on this continent since America. They've been on the continent since America was founded. And still, you see these kinds of conditions prevailing in Baltimore, Detroit, the south side of Chicago. Are these the standards we see in the rest of America, in white America? Is this acceptable in a modern, industrial, democratic, Western nation like the United States? I don't think so. How much longer is it going to take? And what are all the excuses? Well, it's poverty. Oh, well, it's education. Oh, well, it's the destruction of the family. There's a lot of poor white people hanging around. There's a lot of destroyed white families hanging around. I don't see anything comparable, statistically or even anecdotally, happening in any white communities. And so I see that, I think of words like assimilation, and a picture starts to come into focus about what race is really like in the world, So I see this thing in Philadelphia, these cops getting heckled, and on top of that, I just saw on Twitter right before I went live, they're now planning a protest. They're planning a protest in that neighborhood in Philadelphia to protest the police arresting this drug guy who shot 6 police officers. Can you imagine a protest? Is that all these people know how to do? Nobody wants to say that. That's not politically correct. But is that all these people know how to do? Is protest and activism and talk about racism? Because I've had enough of it. And it's not about culture for that matter. We all know what it's about. We all know what it's about. It's been like this from the beginning. And shame on anybody who lies about it, because everybody can see it with their own 2 eyes. I'm not the only one, right? I'm just the only one willing to say it. So that's Philadelphia. Maybe that's a heated gamer moment. Maybe that's not total political correctness, but that's what I see. I see this scene in Philadelphia. I see lots of scenes like this all over the country. And, I don't think this Democrat policy stuff explains it away, honestly. And, we're doing ourselves a real disservice if this is the kind of logic we apply to mass immigration, that it's just a matter of culture, right? What do you think is going to happen if we take these people from one continent and put them here, and 300 years later, Detroit, Haiti, Sub-Saharan Africa, what makes you think you bring a Nicaraguan here and it's not going to look like Nicaragua? Give it 300 years. It'll still look like Nicaragua if we use this other group as a control, right? If we use them as an analogy, as an example. Anyway, you know all this. You've heard all this before. You get it. All right, nobody else understands. I'm a bad person for bringing it up, right, in most social circles, but you guys are cool. You get it. You're gamers, okay? You see through the nonsense, but we're going to move on. We're going to move on. It's just